Hi, I'm Adam,
This is Kevin.
and we are Tech Guys Who Invest. This is the place for business people and investors to learn all about investing. We offer a fresh perspective on what it's like to have a day job while investing, and we share lessons learned on our investing journey. Our vision is to educate and entertain you while adding tons of value to your daily commute. Welcome to our show. So, Kevin, how was your work week?
Thanks for asking, Adam. I think my work week was pretty good. It was pretty busy trying to balance all of the sales tasks that I need to do and making sure I'm up to date with things that are happening in the market and just learning about the entire industry as I am trying to build a book of business. Adam, how was your week?
It was good. As we're recording this, we're coming back from some holidays and feel like we're ramping back up. Not everyone's back in the office yet. And so it was a little bit slow, but kind of a nice week, a nice way to come back from holidays and get started.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, what did you do at work this week, Kevin?
That's a great question, Adam. I am in the software sales space. My territory is EMEA, and for those that don't know, that's an acronym for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And it's my job to, as I alluded to earlier, building a book of business. So reaching out to people via LinkedIn, sending them emails, trying to get their attention to book meetings to showcase what our product can do, and then ultimately close business. So it's a lot of reaching out, making sure that I'm up to date with my tasks, and the follow-up is lock in. The follow-up is at the appropriate time and getting them on my calendar.
Nice. And that's a big region.
Yeah, it's huge. I've only been doing it for I think almost 6 months now, and it's been fun. I'm enjoying it. It's a bit different than what I've done in the past. So, but that's something that I took on this role because I knew that the sales skills were going to take me farther in life, which we'll talk about later in this episode. But Adam, I want to know how your week was and what you did during the week.
So I'm a coach, and a lot of times what I'll do is do trainings and workshops and events like that with clients. And we're preparing for something called an organizational design workshop. And that's where I help a client design the teams and the organizational structure for a very large software program. So I've spent a lot of time this week preparing for that. There's a ton of work that goes in behind the scenes. It's like for every hour that we're in a class going through events and activities, I spend an hour preparing for it outside of class. So a lot of that behind the scenes stuff is pretty interesting.
That makes sense. I mean, in order to be in front of people and make sure that you are talking competently, you have to prepare outside of that. And that resonates with me as a salesperson.
Right. Yeah, it's totally true. You have to be prepared so that it goes well when you're in front of people. For the activities that you mentioned, Kevin, what skills did you use to do that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Adam. And when I think about sales, I like to think of it as trying to find ways to build the systems that are automating the processes that I'm doing. And what I mean by that is making sure I know the last time I reached out to a customer, what we talked about, did they respond? Where are they in the buying process? What was the quoted price that we gave them? What about our product is interesting? Are they fully qualified? All of those things need to be stored somewhere. And I'm sure you're familiar with this as well as our listeners. Our brains suck at storing so much information. We'll kind of prioritize what we need to remember, and then we'll forget about the rest. And as a salesperson, there's a tremendous amount of information that's flowing back and forth between my correspondence with the customer and product development and product management. So I need to find a way to systematize that. At my job, it's leveraging the CRM that we use as well as the Microsoft Outlook that I'm using. So the communication is simplified and it's accurate. And sometimes it is also involved negotiating. And that's something that I took the job on because I knew that wherever I go in life, being able to negotiate is a skill that's going to take me far. And to be frank, I don't like negotiating, but that's a whole nother Pandora's box that we can
Yeah.
discuss and highlight at another time.
We could do a whole show on that. In fact, I could see one of those in our near future, right, Kevin?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that's interesting. A lot of you mentioned a lot of things in there that are very interesting that I'd love to unpack. And um, one of them is some of the skills that you mentioned that to me, I can see a direct line to skills you would need to grow your real estate business, to do activities within your real estate business. Um, can you have you thought about how some of those skills translate over into that?
Absolutely. And the idea of systematizing and making sure that I know who I'm reaching out to, when I'm reaching out to them, and what we're going to talk about, being prepared like you do before you present to people, that same concept is applicable to sales, which also translates to growing the real estate business because that ultimately is me being a salesperson. I need to find leads, pipe those opportunities, and then close those deals. And systematizing helps tremendously. These products or applications, even if it's just a simple Google sheet or an Excel spreadsheet, I lean on those because that's what they're meant to do. They don't have the same limited capacity that my brain does. Because I also use my brain for everything else, right? Like to breathe, to live, remember what my girlfriend and I talked about, or the birthdays of my family members. All of those things are stored in my brain. The applications and the systems, they don't care about that. They're meant and built to for me to leverage them so that I can grow exponentially. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah, it does. And another thing that strikes me as you're explaining the systematization, if that's even a word, but whatever I said, systematizing your activities there is how that saves you time. Especially in your real estate business when that's kind of taking a back seat to your day job right now. There's not always time in the day for everything, so you have to find ways to make things happen without you being needed to physically do every single activity.
Exactly. And one example is in the real estate space is putting tools that I use. For example, one of the things that I use is Buffer, and that's where I can post a good amount of my marketing information about the things I care about. So whether it's an inspirational quote, whether it's an article that I find interesting about real estate to help educate people, for me to share that every single time I see it, that means I'm spending time away from growing the business, whether it's work or real estate. So, spending time to set that up and automate that process is huge. Now I can do more with the remaining time.
Right, right. That's super valuable. And we'll put Buffer in the show notes for everybody. That's a super tool. I use it as well. So um, we'll stick that in the show notes for you guys.
So, Adam, I know that you do a lot, and a lot of it is leadership driven and coaching. I want to know with those skills, how are they applicable to what you're doing in search for a multifamily?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm always kind of looking for how I can leverage skills across both of these things, right? Um, in my day job, I use skills like facilitation, collaboration, teaching, negotiating, planning, organizing. All of those skills are things I use in my day job, and most, if not all of those, really do translate over into my real estate business, and things I learn in real estate translate and help me be a better agile coach in my day jobs, which is pretty interesting. So take for example negotiation. That I completely agree with you about. I'm not comfortable by default. My disposition isn't comfortable negotiating, and it's one that's tough for me. But I am building those skills right now. I'm getting outside my comfort zone in a big way and pushing myself. And I'm building negotiation skills, getting better at it, getting a little more comfortable with it. And I'm able to use that in both places. Obviously, in real estate, you're using it when you're trying to negotiate a deal. And make a
Hmm.
deal profitable. You're using it when you're talking to sellers, or if you're, you know, if you're talking to buyers, you're using it there. And then I find ways to use that in my day job when talking to clients. Collaboration is another one. In multifamily investing, that's kind of a team sport, and you need multiple people on your team to get a deal done. You just can't possibly do it all yourself. I happen to love working with other people. That's my nature. I don't like working alone. So my collaboration skills really help me there, and that is also more enjoyable for me, which is a benefit. So those are a couple of examples about how I can use those skills in both places.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are huge. I like the whole aspect of collaborating, and that's one of the reasons why I love investing in real estate is it is collaborative. If somebody is looking to take down a deal, but they don't have the money, but I can provide the money, we can partner up to purchase that asset. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And collaborating with people is definitely a skill. Building trust and building those relationships are huge when it comes to building the teams that you'll need to help you succeed. So I talked about leveraging systems, and you're talking about leveraging teams, and I think those are great things that you can extract from your day job to apply to our journey to financial freedom.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And another thing that we talked a little bit about teams there, and I talked about designing teams this week. And one of the things we'll do in my workshop when we're designing a team is we will design the teams around a strategy that the client has put together, and everything we do is going to be aligned to that strategy, even the design of the teams. Uh, so that transfers to the real estate business as well, because I remind myself as an investor what my strategy is, and it helps keep me aligned to that. Helps make sure that I'm not going off and doing some activity that isn't aligned to my bigger picture. Which, as that can be easy to find yourself kind of down a rabbit hole, or to working on something that won't move you closer to your ultimate goals.
I agree, and it's a tough balance trying to be product or like more effective as opposed to just productive, right? Doing something that has a defined objective at the end of it, as opposed to just, hey, I'm doing something because I feel like I should be doing something.
Right, right. I agree. So one of the things, Kevin, that you and I've talked about is how our skills in our day job can be used to help us escape the rat race, or get out of your day job if that's what you want to do. Um, how do you think the listener can do the same thing? How could they apply the skills they use in their day job to escape the rat race?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point, Adam. And the way I think about what I'm doing now is how can I add value, whether that's a value to somebody that I'm hoping to be my mentor or a value to somebody I would eventually like to partner up with. What skills can I bring to the table? Right. And I think that is one way that I approach it. And I think that others listening can do the same. Another thing is taking a step back. Like, what do you do at work every day? And what are you good at? I'm sure that whoever is listening to this, there is something that you are good at. Right. And if there's something that you feel like you're not good at, then there are a multitude of ways to improve those skills, whether it's through video, through podcast like the one you're listening to now. It could be books. There are a ton of ways to become better. And by honing those at work, not only are you going to improve your productivity, kind of build a recognition around the quality of work you're doing, but then you'll also start to see things a bit differently by taking that and applying it to different areas. And for example, the ability to communicate ideas is huge in sales. So I practice that. I practice communicating with my girlfriend. I practice communicating with you, setting the right expectations. I'll go to Toastmasters, and all of that practice translates well to my 9 to 5, but then that is also going to spill over into my plan to get out of the rat race sooner.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Adam?
It does. I really like that, and something you said in there was really interesting about think thinking about things you're good at, and I really like that. And that also made me think about identifying things that you like, and there's probably going to be a lot of overlap there because people tend to be good at things that they enjoy doing. They enjoy doing them. They will repeat them. They'll do them more often, and then they'll get better and better at them, and that's what they become good at, right? So identify things that you like to do as well. A lot of those will probably be the same things that you're good at. And that can also be a good way to sort of identify skills that you use in your day job that could be used to help you escape the rat race.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. So speaking of improving those skills, what are some ways that you use to improve your skills as a coach, as a leader, or even as a negotiator?
Well, I think it starts with understanding the skill, or understanding your level of the skill, and having a goal about that. So I think I'm going to step back just a half a step and say the first thing would be to have some sort of a goal for what skills you would like to improve. If an example is, I have a goal in 2019 to improve my negotiation skills. So start with a goal, and then you can assess yourself in some way, measure in some way where you think you are now. So you kind of have a baseline, and then you can determine a way in which you'll know you've made progress towards your goal, right? How you're going to measure yourself to know that you're making progress and you're improving. And then just be intentional about taking steps to improve it. Do things that will help you practice and get better at the skill, and then measure and monitor your progress as you go so you can know how much progress you're making as you improve the skill.
I like that. And to piggyback on the point of measuring, I find that measuring my progress is quite encouraging and inspiring. You're able to see how far you've come, but also able to tweak and adjust to go as far as you need to reaching that goal. So I think that is huge. Finding a way to measure your activity as you're making strides towards your goal is going to be a great value to you.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So, how can using the skills in the way described help our listeners quit their day job?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Adam. And you and I are passionate about real estate and retiring early. And for some of you out there who are listening, it doesn't necessarily have to be real estate. I've read multiple financial uh, blog entries about people who have retired early because they saved up their money from their 20s, invested it, and now they're living off of the dividends. That is great if that's the approach you want to go to, which is why we named it Tech Guys Who Invest, because investing as a whole is a phenomenal way to retire earlier. If you think about it, you can only work a certain amount of time throughout the week. Right. For example, let's say you even work 100 hours, you just find a way to find that energy. That's great. But how sustainable is that? How scalable is that? Money, on the other hand, and assets, they never stop working. So they are continuously growing for you. That's why we're so passionate about it. And to get off of that tangent, to use the skills in a direct fashion, networking is a great example, right? If you are saying, hey, this is what I'm looking to invest in, this is what I'm looking to purchase, you need to get out there to let other people know and find opportunities. And one of the ways to partner up with people is building these relationships. And ultimately, you are trying to make a sale, right? You're trying to sell you as a person that, hey, I am trustworthy. Let's do some work together. Let's make a profit together. Another thing for negotiating, right? Partnerships aren't always structured 50-50. You're going to have to figure out a way to negotiate that partnership. Or when you find a deal and you're trying to solve a problem, you're going to have to negotiate that price down so it fits the price point that you're willing to purchase. Another thing is systematizing. Like we alluded to earlier, you only have so much time in the day. You have to find a way to maximize your time so that you can do twice as much work in an hour or a couple hours, whether that could be through getting a virtual assistant, using apps. All of those things are going to help you set up the pieces to finding opportunities, to letting people know it's what you're looking for, and then building those relationships. I talked a lot there, Adam. I'd love to hear your thoughts to the same question, right? How can using the skills that you mentioned and the skills that you sharpen as an agile coach help our listeners quit their day job?
Yeah, I really like a lot of what you said there, Kevin. I agree with it. And for me, I'm thinking at kind of a high level about how you can use these skills to invest in real estate for the purpose of generating passive income streams. So I will talk a lot about how I favor uh, in multiple income streams over piles of cash. And what I mean when I say that is what you were describing with assets that provide income. And they work when you're asleep. They work when you're not doing anything in particular. They just are always generating a stream of income to you versus something like a pile of cash, which is directly related to how much you work. And then you get a lump sum in some way based on that. So real estate allows you to generate those passive income streams, and using the skills that you've already got can help you develop a real estate business, or at a minimum invest in some way in real estate to generate those passive income streams.
I like that. Those are some nice sound bites and nuggets of knowledge.
Thanks, Kevin. Well, it feels like we're getting near the end. And one thing I wanted to mention is something that I teach in my Agile consulting job as an Agile coach. And that is to use frequent feedback to improve the end product. When we're doing software development and we're building a piece of software, we use a lot of feedback loops to help us make the best product and the highest quality product that we possibly can. And Kevin and I want to do this for our podcast. Therefore, we're asking for your input. We would love to hear what you think about the podcast, especially things that can be improved and what topics you'd like us to focus on in the future. So if you'd like to give us some feedback, we would love to hear it. And we will use your feedback to make this an awesome podcast. That's it for this episode of Tech Guys Who Invest. This is Adam.
And this is Kevin. Thank you so much for listening to us. Don't forget to join our Facebook page where we're building a community of investors so that we can share ideas, tips, and other ways to help us get out of the rat race. If you found value in this podcast, it would mean the world to us if you could share it with your network. Lastly, we love feedback. It's how we get better. So if you wouldn't mind spending 30 seconds and leaving us an honest review on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever platform you're using, that would be super sweet. If you want to get on Adam or Kevin's calendar, go to tgwipodcast.com/contact. We want to help you invest safely, wisely, and ultimately get you out of the rat race. Thanks again.